Good evening and welcome to part 2 of Navigating the Digital Space. In the previous session, we took a brief look at the tools needed to help us navigate the digital space as adults. Today, we will look into how parents can guide their children to navigate cyberspace. Like always, a few preliminary remarks. The first, for most parents, the digital space is new and scary because as parents, we are digital migrants, while youth and children are digital natives. A digital native is a term coined by Mark Prensky in 2001 to describe the generation of people who grew up in an area of unambiguous technology, including computers and the internet. Digital natives are comfortable with technology and computers at a very early age and consider technology to be an integral and necessary part of their lives. Many teenagers and children in urban areas of India are considered to be digital natives as they mainly communicate and learn via computers, social media, chatting and texting apps. The opposite of digital natives is digital migrants. A digital migrant is a person who was raised prior to the digital age. Many parents today would fall into this category, which means they had to learn and adapt to the new language of technology. The second point is children today are brought up on a digital diet from a very young age for various reasons. One example is feeding time, where children are cajoled to eating by distracting them with cartoons on the phone or computer or TV. This attempt to use technology as a baby pacifier comes back to haunt parents when they're trying to control screen time. So let's take a look at some of the issues involved and the possible suggestions that would help resolve these issues. The first is dealing with the issue of screen time. So what is screen time? Screen time includes everything from the use of the mobile phone to TV hours to surfing the net on a computer or a laptop or a tablet. Excessive screen time is a problem that many face and encounter today more now than ever before, where everything is now online because of the pandemic. We can safely say that children and youth are spending an average of 6 to 8 hours a day, if not more, on screen time. Their studies and academics for about 2 or 3 hours a day, and their social networking engagement for the rest of the time. So is it bad? What's wrong with it? While the circumstances of the pandemic makes it understandable for online classes and learning and teaching, what needs to be addressed are the behavioral patterns observed in a child. Is it affecting the child's eating and sleeping habits? Do they engage in family time and interaction? Are your child's friends mainly online friends? Do they go out to pray and engage in some outdoor activity as is allowed in the present time? Or do they prefer to get lost in their virtual world and stay indoors with their devices playing video games? Has screen time consumed the child? And if so, what can be done? Let me start off with things that you should not do, as they will not help remedy the situation, but instead make things worse. I will then suggest a few things that one should do while helping the child navigate digital space. The first is requesting. Sometimes we have this understanding that if we ask our children nicely, please stop using your phone, please give it to me, it's not good for you to use the phone so often. This nice, calm request will be met with compliance. The reality is that this rarely works. Look at the times that you have used this technique and evaluate and see how often it has worked for you. The second thing that we should not try to do is to test the willpower of our children. The argument here is that my child needs to come to the understanding and realization of the harm that this excessive use of the mobile gadget is doing to him or her, and be responsible in making right decisions. Remember that children are not as emotionally savvy as they are techno-savvy. And if they could have come to a mature conclusion, decision, and action, it would never become an area of concern for you as a parent. The reality is that screen time that the child is engaging in is rewarding in itself, that the child is not in a position to stop himself or herself. By putting the onus on them to overcome their screen time by themselves is really setting them up for failure and setting yourself up for disappointment. The third don't do is shouting or nagging, the famous touch of the mother's emotional blackmail. When are you going to put down that device? Put down that phone now. You've already spent 4 hours on that phone. Put it down now or I'll break that phone of yours. Or the famous touch of emotional blackmail. After all that I've done for you, is this the way you repay me? Is this how you behave with me? This doesn't work. So what then will work? The first is prevention. The ideal is prevention. If your child is at a young age and below 10, then prevention is the best way forward. With younger children, it is relatively easier to establish your authority as a parent and say no. Parents have tended to give their children gadgets like a phone, tablet or laptop so that it will keep the child busy, stop siblings from getting into fights with each other, or prevent the child from creating a mess at the house. The hope is that if I've got the child engrossed with that device, at least I can have some peace of mind. Well, this idea of using these devices as a babysitter is a bad idea. Keeping children away from their gadgets gets harder as they grow up, and their addiction to these devices gets deeper. As they reach adolescence, habits are already formed, and at this age, they are likely to question your authority. So catch them young. The second is to have clear rules for screen time. This will differ from family to family and from person to person. For younger children below 10, most experts recommend screen time of 1 hour a day. For older children, depending on their school assignments and other activities and studies, the recommended screen time is between 2 to 3 hours. This, of course, is the general idea. It's subject to what the child does with the screen time. If they're watching a documentary or using an educational program, 2 to 3 hours looks like a good idea. If, however, they're playing video games, even 2 hours is more than enough. So understand the composition of your child's screen time, and taking that understanding into consideration is important. Taking into consideration what your child is actually doing with their screen time, parents must come up with an acceptable number of hours which are allowed. And this must be communicated to the child clearly and strongly. So if you decide the limit to the child's screen time is 3 hours, then make it a rule and don't break it. The third do is clear enforcement of rules. As parents, you need to assert your authority and say no. The best analogy I can think of to illustrate this point is to see yourself as a custom officer. Think of screen time as limited or forbidden import. For each product, there is a limit as to how much you are allowed. And if you cross that limit, the custom officer will seize the items. This is non-negotiable. There must be a clean, well-established authority and execution of rules. Parents need to understand this process and execute these rules rationally, without violence or abuse, and with the least possible harm. When it comes to screen time, the enforcement of rules must be used instead of requesting or nagging. The fourth is rational, consistent communication. You made a rule, you are executing it. But your child might not know the reason or the rationale behind your decision. So now it becomes your job to communicate everything rationally and consistently. You need to let them know the reason behind your decision. Because I'm your dad and I told you so doesn't cut it. Your reasons could be many: health, eyesight, engaging with people in real time, developing soft skills, etc. These reasons must be communicated in every manner possible, calmly, strongly, in short, in detail. They might never agree with your decision, but you need to communicate with your child. Consistency matters. It is important to note that once you follow this process, you will receive a lot of pushback, talkback, reactions from your child. There's a possibility, and a real possibility, of tantrums and rebellion. But you need to stick in with the plan. You need to stick to the plan and not throw in the towel. When they resist, it is your turn to learn something new and find a way to resolve the problem. And finally, replace the screen time with real and better activities. You've taken something from them, now you need to give them something back in return that will foster their curiosity and get them involved. Get them into activities like dance or exercise or sports. Spend quality time with them in conversation and sharing. Let them interact with their friends, keeping, of course, the norms of social distancing. To summarize, here are the things that I have communicated. You take their gadgets away, but you give them something back in return. When you take their gadgets away, you do three major things. A, set clean rules of the quantum of screen time. Execute those rules with full authority and the least possible harm. Support the rules with clear and consistent rational communication. Do this as early as you can in their childhood when they are still willing to accept your authority. The next point that we need to understand as parents is use of parental controls on Wi-Fi and mobile devices. Because of the present situation where everything from health to education and faith is accessed online, there are real possibilities that undesirable sites may be accessed. Kids can get into all sorts of mischief on their phones and tablets, either on purpose or by accident. And if you monitor your child's device activity in the modern age, you will need parenting control services that work well on mobile platforms in addition to desktops. There are various apps that can be used to ensure that our children are always safe online. And in the description of the video below, we will put up the links as to where you can get these best parenting control apps for your phones. Social media sites have age restrictions. As parents, you need to get your children to adhere to them. Just because there is a game they like to play does not justify the creation of an account. The problem very often happens that parents give their children a device, and when they give their children a device, they allow the child to create a Facebook page, an Instagram page, or other social media pages so that they can play the game they'd like to play. Age restrictions at social media sites normally are 13 years, some are 14. So it's not appropriate for them to have an account in order to play the game, because the moment they have an account to play the game, they also going to be drawn into the whole world of what social media is all about, and they are not yet prepared for it. And therefore, it's best that if they do not fit the age criteria of a social media platform, it's best not to allow them to create an account or use your device to play that game. The next point is beware of the dark web and the deep web. The term deep web and dark web are sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not the same. The deep web refers to anything on the internet that is not indexed by and therefore not accessible via search engines like Google or Yahoo. Deep web content includes anything behind paywall or requires sign-in credentials. It also includes any content its owners have blocked web crawlers from indexing. Web crawlers refer to search engines. Medical records, fee-based content, membership, credit card membership, websites, and confidential corporate web pages are just a few examples that make up the deep web. Estimates place the size of the deep web at between 96 to 99% of the internet. Only a tiny portion of the internet is accessible through a standard web browser, generally known as clear web. The dark web is the dangerous underbelly of the net. It was responsible for the game Blue Whale that pushed players to commit suicide. Remember that curiosity and peer pressure are tremendous motivators, and all children are vulnerable to them. At times for the better and at times for the worse. As parents, we have to navigate with them for the better. I do hope this session geared towards parenting in the digital age was helpful. The world of cyberspace is filled with opportunities and challenges. May we navigate the digital world effectively. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe.